Welcome to Cheetah Confessions. Let's dive into today's story. I hadn't been alone in the house for years. Between work, the kids, and Rose, there was always noise, always something going on. But this weekend, everything changed. Rose took our two boys, Ethan and Jake, to visit her parents in Florida. She had been planning the trip for weeks, making sure the kids packed, booking the flights, and handling every little detail. Meanwhile, I stayed behind. Work had me tied up, and to be honest, a quiet house sounded like a much-needed break. The first night alone, I made a lazy dinner, sat on the couch, and enjoyed the silence. No cartoons blaring, no arguments over bedtime, just me and my thoughts. Around 9 p.m., a knock on the door interrupted my peace. I opened it to find my neighbor Greg standing there. Greg was in his late 50s, a retired cop who still acted like he was on duty, always watching over the neighborhood. "Hey Jeff," he said, stepping onto the porch without waiting for an invite. "Saw Rose and the kids leave earlier. You flying solo now?" "Yeah," I nodded. "Just me, myself, and I." Greg chuckled. "Well, listen, I wanted to give you a heads up. I installed some new security cameras around my place. You ever thought about getting some security cameras?" I frowned. "I mean, we live in a pretty safe neighborhood." Greg shrugged. "That's what they all say. Until something happens. You'd be surprised how many break-ins happen when people let their guard down." He tapped his temple. "A guy I know, lives 4 blocks away, had his house broken into a couple of days ago. Just something to think about." I laughed, shaking my head. "I appreciate the concern, Greg, but I think I'll be fine." "Suit yourself," he said, raising his hands. "Just remember, being prepared is better than being sorry." After he left, I shut the door and dismissed the idea. Cameras felt unnecessary. But that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the thought. What if someone was in my house, and I didn't even know it? By morning, the thought had grown into something I couldn't ignore. So, after scrolling through some online deals, I ordered a set of cameras that could stream live footage to my phone. It wasn't paranoia, I told myself. It was just an extra precaution. When the cameras arrived, I spent the afternoon installing them, one at the front door, another in the backyard, and one inside near the living room. I even tested them, watching myself move around in real time through the app. Satisfied, I shut my phone and went about my day, feeling oddly relieved. What I didn't realize then, what I should have realized, was that I had just set myself up to see something I was never meant to see. The next few days flew by. The house was quiet, and I was enjoying the solitude. But when Rose and the kids returned on Sunday afternoon, the silence was finally broken. Rose walked in, the kids running around her laughing, shouting, filling the house with that familiar chaos. I could hear Ethan and Jake arguing over who got to sit where on the couch, and Rose's gentle voice trying to mediate. I smiled to myself as I watched it all unfold, normal family stuff. Everything felt right again. I hadn't thought about the cameras at all in the past few days. Honestly, I just enjoyed being with my family, returning to our usual routine. I didn't know it then, but that moment of peace would be the last time things felt normal. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I was sitting at my desk at work, sifting through emails, when the thought of the cameras popped into my head. Maybe it was the quiet feeling in the back of my mind, but I figured I'd check the footage, just a quick peek. I opened the camera app on my phone, scrolling through the clips. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until I stopped on one from the previous Saturday afternoon. In the video, I saw Rose at the front door talking to someone. At first, it seemed harmless enough, but then the man entered the house. A tall, stocky guy in a dark jacket. I recognized Rose's smile. She was happy to see him. But who was he? I didn't recognize him at all. I leaned in closer, pausing the footage as the man walked further into the house. The way he moved almost too familiar. He wasn't a stranger. He knew where to go. My heart skipped a beat. I replayed the video again, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was just someone from work or a friend of hers I didn't know. But the more I watched, the more uneasy I felt. I should have called Rose, confronted her, but I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to. Instead, I just closed the app and shoved my phone into my pocket. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing that man, his movements, the way he seemed so comfortable in my home. I tried to push it out of my mind. Maybe I was overthinking it. A couple of days later, I couldn't help it. I had to check again. I opened the app once more, scrolling through more footage from the days after Rose came back. And there he was again. The same guy. I watched, frozen, as he walked through the house again. This time, he was in the living room, laughing with Rose. I could see the two of them talking, sitting on the couch together. This wasn't just a random visit. This guy knew Rose. Knew our house. Something wasn't right. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I installed 2 more cameras in the living room, one in the kitchen and one inside the bedroom. I didn't tell Rose. I didn't want to seem paranoid, but I couldn't help it. I needed to know who this man was. A week later, late at night, I finally sat down to check the footage again. The house was silent. Rose and the kids were asleep, unaware of what I was about to uncover. I wasn't expecting much, just the usual routine. Rose with the kids, Rose cooking, maybe that man showing up again. Maybe not. I clicked through the timestamps, fast-forwarding through the usual household scenes. Kids playing in the backyard, Rose cleaning the kitchen. Nothing unusual. Then the bedroom footage caught my eye. My stomach dropped. I clicked the file, my heart hammering in my chest. The footage loaded, and for a moment, all I saw was Rose standing by the bed. A few seconds later, he walked in. The same man. I gripped my phone so hard, my fingers ached. Rose didn't look surprised. She didn't ask him why he was there. She didn't push him away. She reached for him. My breath caught in my throat. I watched as they kissed, their hands pulling each other close. They whispered something, words I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. The way they looked at each other, the way they moved, it was clear. Too clear. Then, piece by piece, their clothes came off. I shut my phone. My hands were shaking. My entire body felt cold. It wasn't just some random guy. It wasn't some moment of weakness. This was something else. I sat there, staring at the wall. My mind blank. How long? How long had this been happening right under my nose? I tried to take a deep breath, but it felt like my chest wouldn't expand. My home, my marriage, my wife, everything ruined in a matter of minutes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to wake her up and demand an explanation. But what could she possibly say? What excuse could she give that would make this hurt any less? Nothing, because there was nothing left to say. The next morning, I didn't say a word to Rose. I went through the motions, got up, made coffee, watched the kids eat breakfast. Rose acted normal, completely unaware that I knew everything. I watched her laugh with Ethan and Jake, kiss them on the forehead before sending them off to school, as if nothing had happened. As soon as the door shut behind them, I spoke. "Sit down." She turned to me, confused. "What?" "Sit down." Something in my voice must have told her I wasn't joking, because she slowly lowered herself onto the couch. I pulled out my phone, opened the footage, and handed it to her. She took it, frowning, until she pressed play. I watched her face carefully, watched her lips part slightly, her breath hitch as realization set in. The color drained from her face. She covered her mouth with one hand, eyes flicking between me and the screen. For a moment, she was completely silent. Then, in a shaky voice, she whispered, "Jeff, please." I crossed my arms, waiting. She swallowed hard. It meant nothing. It was a mistake. I still love you. I let out a short, bitter laugh. A mistake? A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This. I gestured at the phone. This was a choice. Over and over again. Tears welled in her eyes. I swear it didn't mean anything. Stop saying that, I cut her off. It meant enough for you to bring him into our home. Into our bed. I shook my head. You don't get it, do you? The trust is gone. What you did can't be fixed. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Jeff, please, she begged, her voice cracking. Don't do this. Don't throw everything away. I stood up, looking down at her. I'm not the one who threw it away, Rose. You did. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked down the hall to the bedroom, the same one that now felt ruined. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started packing a few shirts, jeans, and some essentials, just enough to get by for a few days. My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow, like I was watching myself from the outside. Rose stood in the doorway, eyes red, lips trembling. Where are you going? I zipped up the bag. I can't stay here. She took a small step forward. Jeff, please. I brushed past her without looking back. I didn't stop until I was in my car, engine running, my mind a mess. But I knew exactly where I was going, my mother's house. She opened the door, surprised to see me standing there with a bag slung over my shoulder. Jeff, what's going on? I let out a slow breath. Can I come in? She stepped aside immediately, concern etched across her face. As soon as I sat down, the words just came spilling out the cameras, the footage, the betrayal. She listened, her expression shifting from shock to sadness to quiet anger. Oh, Jeff, she finally said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. I'm so sorry. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I'm done, Mom. I can't go back. She nodded in understanding. Then don't. The next morning, I went straight to a lawyer. Filing for divorce felt surreal, but there was no hesitation. I wasn't interested in second chances or explanations. I just wanted out. But as I walked out of the lawyer's office, something kept gnawing at me. The man, who was he? I hired a private investigator. I gave him everything I knew, descriptions, the footage, any little detail that might help. A few days later, he called me back. I found him, he said. I gripped the phone tighter. Who is he? There was a brief pause, like he was bracing himself. His name is Mark. He's a teacher at your kid's school. I couldn't believe it. A teacher. Not just some guy. Someone from our kid's school. Someone who saw my sons every day. Who smiled at them in the hallways while sneaking around with their mother. I sat in my car, outside my mother's house, gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm the storm inside me. But there was no stopping it. I had to confront her one last time. That evening, I drove back to the house. As soon as I stepped inside, Ethan and Jake ran up to me, clearly missing me. I glanced at Rose, who stood frozen near the kitchen, clearly not expecting me. I crouched down and hugged my boys tightly. I love you both so much, I said, my voice steady despite the weight in my chest. But I need to talk to your mom for a moment, okay? They hesitated, looking between us, then slowly walked to their room. As soon as they were gone, I turned to Rose. You're cheating on me with our son's teacher, I said, my voice low but sharp. His teacher, Rose. I can't believe it. She swallowed hard. Jeff, please. I don't want to hear it, I cut her off. I know who he is. I know everything. And I want you to know that I already filed for divorce. Her eyes widened. You what? It's over. I let the words sink in. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. For a second, she looked like she wanted to argue, to beg, to explain. But there was nothing left to say. This wasn't my home anymore. The next morning, I went straight to the school and requested a meeting with the principal. When I showed him the evidence, I made it clear that a teacher having an affair with a student's mother was unacceptable. The principal, clearly disturbed, assured me that appropriate action would be taken. By the end of the day, Mark was fired. The divorce process moved quickly. There was no fixing this. We both knew it. Rose tried at first apologies, tears, promises, but they meant nothing. She destroyed our family, and nothing she said could undo it. We split everything evenly, though she kept the house, and I moved into a small apartment downtown. The hardest part was figuring out custody. I didn't want to take the boys away from their mother, but I also couldn't bear the thought of seeing her every day. In the end, we agreed to shared custody weekends with me, weekdays with her. It wasn't perfect, but at least I still had my boys. The day the divorce was finalized, I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter. The pain was still there. The betrayal still stung. But I wasn't trapped anymore. I had my freedom, my dignity, and a future that was mine to rebuild. And that was enough.